by a period of review of the public submissions and then drafting of the final policy for consideration in Parliament and through the executive. It is important to know that the Commission has not yet made a decision on the use of e-voting, and certainly this is not contemplated for use in next year's municipal elections.
The U.S. senior advisor for Africa says he believes a peace settlement in the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo is likely. Masad Boulos, who recently met the Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi and the Rwandan leader Paul Kagame, said both sides were serious. He added that the United States was interested in deals on critical minerals with both countries, but said that would need a lasting peace.
Our role is to encourage dialogue between both sides. Now I'm talking about the DRC and Rwanda side, but also internal dialogue within the DRC, such as a dialogue between the DRC government with the M23. This is happening now, and this is a very good development.
Lastly, the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance says explicit proposals have been issued to both Russia and Ukraine as Washington pushes for an end to the war. Earlier, a high-level meeting in London between the U.S. and Ukraine and some of its main European allies was downgraded. Reports indicate the U.S. might be considering recognizing occupied Crimea as Russian territory. Vance says it is time for both to agree, warning that if not, the U.S. will walk away from the process.
We've put together a very fair proposal. We're going to see if the Europeans, the Russians, and the Ukrainians are ultimately able to get this thing over the finish line. I feel pretty optimistic about it. I think everybody has been negotiating in good faith. It's now time, I think, to take, if not the final step, one of the final steps.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Arsenal held by Crystal Palace to leave Liverpool needing just 1 point to win the Premier League title, while Iga Swiatek glad of the high expectations ahead of the Madrid title defence. Details of these and other stories at 6:30.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Well, and thanks to Musubudi Makura there. On that point, let's thank the team. She's on sport. And then before her was Onele Nzinzi on news. On economics news or business news is Eva Cheaper. On technical production is Catherine Malega. On social media, Talent Butelezi. On production, Tlengiwe Mabaso and Joey Lihodi. Also thanking Ujabu Nkolele for bringing us to the start of Rise and Shine.
Yes, indeed. And so right now, after the 6 o'clock news every single morning, we try to give you a concise roundup of the top stories from across the continent that happened in the past 24 hours. And this really is to give you an opportunity to catch up on all the important news. And we use our team of reporters, analysts and experts to provide an important context for you to stay informed. So let's start today's Africa Roundup with this news. United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, is calling for immediate and concerted efforts to tackle the alarming nutrition crisis affecting almost 13 million children. And this is with acute malnutrition in eastern and southern Africa, of which nearly 4 million children are estimated to be suffering severely. Alina Michaska is a nutrition specialist at UNICEF's Eastern and Southern Africa region, and she tells us more.
Crisis level hunger, really, we're talking about almost 500,000 children, so more than 460,000 children that are projected to face severe acute malnutrition in Somalia. And in addition to this, in Somalia, 2/3 of children, so that's over the regional average, double the regional average, are living in severe food poverty, surviving on 1 or 2 food groups per day. So it's the ongoing poor rainfall and drought, coupled with high food prices and conflict, that have really exacerbated this crisis in Somalia, and it's leaving families struggling to access essential nutrition services, as well as health services and proper water, sanitation, and hygiene.
South Africa's Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen says South Africa's presidency of the G20 comes at a crucial time. Steenhuisen says the world's food systems are threatened by food insecurity, climate volatility, and systemic exclusion. He addressed delegates at the opening of the G20 meetings of the Agriculture Working Group and Food Security Task Force in Durban.
And there can be no overstating the importance that agriculture plays in our world. It feeds families, it fuels economies, and it stabilizes communities. But to unlock its full potential, we need to make sure that we move beyond just good intentions, beyond just rhetoric, and towards the kind of practical collaborations that will enable lasting change. We must be honest. The benefits of agricultural development have not been shared equally, not within countries, and certainly not between them.
The International Monetary Fund has once again slashed South Africa's growth forecast, cutting expectations by 0.5 percentage point for 2025 to just 1%. That's according to the updated World Economic Outlook, which was published by the IMF this week. The IMF's chief economist is Pierre-Olivier Gourinchas.
The surge in policy uncertainty is a major driver of the economic outlook. If sustained, the increase in trade tensions and uncertainty will slow global growth significantly. Reflecting this complexity, our report presents a reference forecast which incorporates policy announcements up to April 4 by the US and trading partners. Under these reference forecasts, global growth will reach 2.8% this year and 3% next year, a cumulative downgrade of about 0.8 percentage point relative to our January 2025 WEO update.
China has accused the United States of severely undermining the rules-based multilateral system, severely disrupting the global economic order while infringing on the legitimate rights and interests of all countries. These were remarks made by China's ambassador to the United Nations, Fu Kong.
The U.S. is playing a zero-sum game, which is essentially about subverting the existing international economic and trade order by means of tariffs, putting U.S. interests above the common good of the international community, and advancing hegemonic ambitions of the U.S. at the cost of the legitimate interest of all countries. The world once again finds itself at a crucial crossroads. Should we firmly advocate multilateralism, or should we allow unilateralism to spread unchecked? Should we promote democracy in international relations, or should we condone power politics? Should we abide by international law and the basic rules governing international relations? Or should we return to the law of the jungle where the strong prey on the weak?
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said on Wednesday that high tariffs between the United States and China are not sustainable, as President Donald Trump's administration signaled openness to de-escalating a trade war between the world's two largest economies that has raised fears of a recession.
China, in particular, is in need of a rebalancing. China's current economic model is built on exporting its way out of its economic troubles. It's an unsustainable model that is not only harming China, but the entire world. China needs to change. The country knows it needs to change. Everyone knows it needs to change, and we want to help it change because we need rebalancing too. Sometimes it takes an external push. Right. There is an opportunity.
And that's how we come to the end of today's Africa Roundup. We'll have more for you tomorrow. That's a look at all the top stories that played out in a concise form that you can use to keep updated. Stay with us. Asanda is going to be taking us to West Africa to find out what are the top stories that are playing out there at the moment.
Este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África, com Remo Samo e João Yabalá.
O surto da cólera em Angola tem causado grande preocupação, afetando já mais de metade das províncias do país. Simultaneamente, a Agência dos Estados Unidos para o Desenvolvimento Internacional, USAID, um dos maiores doadores mundiais de assistência humanitária, decidiu não priorizar os países com maior incidência de malária. Para discutirmos as causas do alastramento da cólera em Angola e os impactos dessa decisão da USAID, convidamos o Dr. Jeremias Agostinho, médico e mestre em saúde pública, para partilhar a sua visão sobre o tema.
A doença, nesse momento, representa o maior risco de saúde pública que nós temos. Nos últimos anos, a nossa preocupação esteve sempre centrado com os casos de malária, os casos de tuberculose e também de infecção por VIH-Sida. A forma como, em pouco menos de 2 meses, os casos de cólera vêm aumentando, acaba por representar, nessa altura, um dos maiores desafios que o país tem. É expectável que, nesta fase, o número de casos venha a aumentar.
De segunda a sexta-feira, das 20 às 21 horas locais, este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
So it looks like there are, even though we were saying yesterday in terms of the successor for Pope Francis, quite a few delegates from the African continent. I'm not sure how you feel about that. There's representation from Guinea. We have a cardinal from Ghana. There's one from the Democratic Republic of Congo as well. I just don't remember their names now. I'll just check them quickly. Why do you think they're even mentioning these names?
Well, look, for us, I think because Francis was the first from South America, there's never been a pope from Africa. So it is a topical thing. However, we have to think about how the process happens. And what happens is a group of cardinals, and these are individual human beings, sit in a room and they convince each other about the person they want to lead them. So they're not sitting there thinking, oh, it should be Africa's turn. They literally are basing it on personal relationships, probably, and some campaigning goes on behind the scenes. I'm sure that there's a group that's already come together that said, listen, we need to push for Asanda to become the Pope. So I think whilst it's interesting for us to talk about and it's fascinating as a conversation piece, the reality actually is that you've just got a group of people in a room busy deciding who they want to lead them, and then by extension the entire Catholic Church. And we'll just have to see
because we never know. We'll never know who will make it. We're not part of those meetings.
No.
And nobody can ever know. I don't know if it's just speculation or if we're trying to gather some excitement around this topic.
We want for it to be an African, absolutely. I mean, as I said yesterday, 1/5 of the Catholic Church is from Africa. And so for representation's sake, I think it's time, after 266 popes, that at least one of them is from Africa.
What was also interesting for me, there's a Filipino candidate, and they are about 80% in terms of the population of the Philippines who are Catholic. I would have never guessed that. That also surprised me, that figure.
Yeah. Well, for me, not so much, because if you think about the Spanish, what do they call them? Colonies.
Yes.
They brought Catholicism with them to those countries. And so that's why you find a lot of the African countries that were colonized by the UK and so on and so forth, some of them are Anglican and some of them are Catholic. But anyway, you're going to find out what's happening in West Africa.
Yes, we get into now the West Africa region of the continent, where we reflect on some of the top stories. Helping us to unpack some of these stories is Dr. David Nyakorak Matsanga, who is a political science and international relations expert, as well as founder and chairman of the Pan-African Forum Limited. Thank you so much for joining us again, Dr. Nyakorak Matsanga. Always great having these conversations and catching up with you. How are you this Thursday?
Good morning, Africa. Good morning, the rest of the world. those who are listening to us and watching us live, wherever you are.
Awesome. Let's go to Ghana, starting there. And we did mention even Ghana being represented as part of who might succeed Pope Francis. The Ghanaian President, John Mahama, has suspended the country's Supreme Court Chief Justice. This move marks a first in the country's history. What do you make of this?
First of all, it is the Ghanaian constitution allows the president to take action on the judiciary, unlike some constitutions on the African continent. So that it is not a surprise to me at all, having read the Ghanaian constitution. But what surprises me is it comes after a few months and the swearing in ceremony that took place where the Chief Justice was able to do it very nicely and candidly. And I believe that women were proud when they saw her doing so, and that the world was happy that at least we are moving somewhere. We have several chief judges, two at least in Kenya, and another one in Ghana, and another one in another country. It was a great sign, but the Constitution of Republic of Ghana allows the president to review the judicial service. He has powers to suspend judges, unlike in Kenya, where you must go through a tribunal. In Ghana, the president can take a decision, and I think he has taken a decision.
So, Ms. Gertrude Tokono, being Ghana's third female Chief Justice, there has been a launch into allegations against her. What are these allegations?
Some of them include corruption. Some of them include bias, political bias. You remember, under President Nana Addo, there were quite a lot. This was an appointee of President Nana Addo, and I think during her term as the Chief Justice, there were some things that were not working well with the opposition. And it teaches one thing, my sister, that when you are appointed to these positions, you should not become personal. We should not weaponize judiciary. We should not weaponize politics. We should not weaponize everything. You see, she was appointed. It is also happening across. Even there, you can see Trump struggling, trying to sack judges that don't rhyme. We are following an American style of bad politics that is being injected into our systems in Africa without questioning. Why do you weaponize judiciary? Why do you make judiciary a weapon against the opposition or a weapon against the government? It should not be so. So it teaches us a great lesson as Africans.
There were 3 petitions calling for her removal. Do we know where they were coming from?
Yes, they were coming from several people, corruption charges, several people that claim bribery, and so many from amongst the people. I mean, if they put a petition, unlike in some other countries where the constitutional dispensation allows for an independent committee to investigate into allegations, this one in Ghana gives the president strict powers to suspend you, and as investigations are carried out. In other countries, first it is the panel. It has to bring evidence. It has to follow the timelines, and then the judge can defend herself against these accusations. And I believe Ghana has got that. I saw that constitution. They have that mechanism where she will be able to stand and say, I didn't do this. This is a lie, and I am not part of the part of these lies. Or alternatively, she can decide to quit and say, I've had enough, so that she can save her retirement package.
Well, I mean, suspension does not amount to an accusation of guilt, but I mean, it is going to be part of a procedure now designed to uphold the integrity of the office.
Yes.
What do you think her reputation will be after all of this, even if she is cleared?
I think once you are, let's learn one thing in Africa. Once you are mentioned in something, especially in the judiciary, you lose integrity. You lose it, even if the allegations are finally thrown out, you lose integrity. For me, I have one feeling as a Pan-African. If I'm mentioned in a scandal, I step aside and go, leave a stage. Let's act like a Shakespeare. It's a stage where you come, you play, you go. It's or the play of Macbeth and so on. Step out. You see, some Africans, even if they are told that you are doing like this, they stick there. In other developed democracies like Japan, if a train knocks another train, the Minister of Transport will resign. You see, let's learn that culture of saying, I should not stick back, fight back, create the whole country to a crisis because I needed this job. You step aside and go and do some other things. I don't think you should have the integrity to run the Supreme Court again.
Let's move to the U.S. now. The senior advisor for Africa there, Masad Boulos, has said that President Donald Trump values Africa despite announcing sweeping aid cuts that have caused, of course, a considerable humanitarian crisis across the continent. Is this the oxymoron of the year?
I think this is a very big hoax. It's one of the most obnoxious, prudish, sardonic statements that I've had. You love Africa, you value Africa, then you put Africa on sanctions. Yet you milk Africa every day. You milk our minerals. You take our gold, diamond. You take our oil, timber. You take almost everything from us. You even take our visa money. You know you don't refund it. You say you are taking a visa money of $200 per person, but unrefundable. Don't think we are stupid, Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump thinks that everybody is stupid. No, some of us went to better schools than Trump, and we studied so hard to make sure that we understand what they do. How can you say you value Africa at the same time you are punishing us? What type of reasoning is that? That is the mind that is very dangerous mind. A mind that can look at a country like South Africa and say, oh, they are discriminating white farmers. Why are they being discriminated? You look at a country like Zimbabwe and you say, oh, Zimbabwe is an axis of evil. Where is Zimbabwe? Does it have anything to do with a nuclear weapon? No. Stupidity of this nature must be condemned. Unfortunately, in Africa, we don't have leaders who stand up to condemn such stupidity. It is immoral for you to say you value us, at the same time you are punishing us to go to hell or to die. Medicine is being withdrawn, and people who have HIV have no treatment, cancer, no treatment. You are cutting your aid, then you value us. What do you value us about? What do you value us about? Someone in Africa must stand, and unfortunately, all the presidents in Africa,
let's move to Burkina Faso
Robert
before we run out of time.
Gone. Yes. Everybody is gone. People are quiet because they fear Trump. No, we should challenge America on the basis of international law. There is a law.
Yeah, Doctor, I want us to touch on. I want us to touch on Burkina Faso before we run out of time. Yes. The authorities in Burkina Faso say they foiled a significant attempt to overthrow the transitional government led by Captain Ibrahim Traore. So according to the military sources, the plot involved several officers within the armed forces in Burkina Faso. Were they acting alone?
Again, America and France. And we are not speaking up. This young man in Burkina Faso, my sister, and every African, I call upon you to travel to Burkina Faso. You see the changes. If you have been there when there was a civilian corrupt government, and go there right now, you would not love to come to South Africa or come back to Kampala. you will want to live there. There is medical treatment. There are cars. He has bought over 800 ambulances that reach almost every village with doctors equipped with equipment to treat people. Which president in Africa has done this? This man is being haunted out by the two superpowers of United Nations Security Council. And I agree with President Ruto of Kenya, who said United Nations Security Council is no more. They are quarreling France and USA against China and Russia. Where are they keeping the peace? They now want to kill this man. And we
any arrests? Have there any arrests been made? Doctor, have there any been?
We kept quiet.
Any arrests made, Doctor? Finally,
we must defend this man. He's doing a great job, and we shall defend him as African. He might have taken power by the gun, but let me tell you, my sister, this gentleman has done a great job in Burkina Faso. Thank you.
Any arrests, Doctor, made according to this foiled coup?
Yes.
Okay, let's leave
Some
it
of
there.
us who are
Arrests have been made.
Friends of this gentleman, we are watching out. We are also going to help him in terms of intelligence. We are going to help him. You remember one man.
We do have to completely leave it there, Doctor, and I'm sorry to talk over you, but we are out of time, and we really appreciate your insights, Dr. David Nyakorak Matsanga is political science and international relations expert, as well as founder, chairman of Pan-African Forum Limited. Most passionate man about Africa, I think, if you hear him in how he speaks. 31 minutes past 6 Central African time. Let's get our news headlines. Here's Onel Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Protests are expected from political parties in South Africa as the country president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is expected to host the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, on an official visit to the country in Pretoria today. The authorities in Benin say militants killed 54 soldiers last week in an attack near the border with Burkina Faso and Niger. And India has closed its main border crossing with Pakistan over Tuesday's attack on tourists in the Indian-administered Kashmir region, which left 26 people killed. Channel Africa News, I'm Onel Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
It's 6:32, which means it's time for our first sports news update as we say good morning to Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Very good morning from the sports desk. We'll start here. So Crystal Palace twice came from behind to draw at second place Arsenal and leave Liverpool with just needing 1 point from being crowned champions of the Premier League for a second time in 5 seasons. So a draw against Tottenham Hotspur at Anfield this coming Sunday would be enough for Arne Slot's side, who lead Arsenal by 12 points to clinch their 20th league title, equaling, of course, Manchester United's record. Both Arsenal as well as Palace main focus is on their cup exploits, with the Gunners in the UEFA Champions League semi-finals and the Eagles at the same stage in the FA Cup, and both managers rested key players last night. Mikel Arteta was quite disappointed with the result as well as the performance.
Yeah, disappointed with the results and with the performance as well. I think we never got the consistency in many areas to completely dominate the game. We always had the feeling that, we had the ball, we had possession, we went in front twice, but the game wasn't grabbed, it wasn't dominated and controlled in the way that we normally do, because we were below the standards in some areas. And when you are not at your best, but you are 2 times ahead, you have to be able to see the game off.
Onto this now, despite the incidents of crowd violence after the recent Africa Cup of Nations matches, the president of the Confederation of African Football, Patrice Motsepe, says significant progress has been made in creating safe environments for spectators to watch football. Now, Champions League semi-finalist Orlando Pirates, as well as Mamelodi Sundowns, were fined and received other sanctions. This after recent matches against North African opponents at the Orlando Stadium, as well as Loftus Versfeld, ended in chaos. Speaking at the signing of a new partnership with a logistic company in Sandton on a Wednesday, Motsepe reiterated that spectators should feel safe at stadiums.
I've got no doubt that I got exposed to what has been happening. We'll improve significantly because whether it's in sub-Saharan Africa or Northern Africa or Eastern Africa or West Africa, we want to make sure that the measures we take, and to a large extent, is how you prepare and what you do in advance. And I'm confident that we will significantly increase the safety and to make sure that our families and our supporters can come to the stadium knowing that it's safe and it's a good environment to be in.
On to cricket news now. Zimbabwe won their first test match in 4 years with a 3-wicket victory over Bangladesh in Sylhet yesterday. Now chasing 174, the tourists slipped to 90 for the loss of no wicket, then to 161 for the loss of 7 wickets, enduring a nervous finish before Wesley Madhevere closed the match with a 4. So Zimbabwe set up the victory in the morning session of the final day, reducing Bangladesh to 194 for 4 to 255 all out, with player of the match Blessing Muzarabani also taking 6 for 72. Now Zimbabwe will now seek a series victory in the second and final test beginning in Chattogram next week Monday. It would also be the first series victory since beating Bangladesh in a once-off test match in August of 2011, while also they are facing the same opponents for their last multi-match series victory in 2004. So following their tour, they will fly to England to play a one-off test match at Trent Bridge starting on the 22nd of May. The last time they toured England for test matches was back in 2003, losing at Lord's as well as Chester Lee Street. We'll stay with cricket news. Proteas woman batter Lara Goodwell has downplayed the pressure towards her after receiving a late call-up to the team currently touring Sri Lanka. So the player was not in the original 15-player contingent to play the Islanders and India in an ODI tri-series starting on the 29th of April. Was added to the list just last week, Thursday, following an illness to Annika Bosch. So Laura recently missed out on the central contract for Cricket South Africa for the 2025-2026 season. And while that's a bitter pill to swallow, she says that there's no need to feel under pressure on this tour. The left-handed batter also admitted to being pleasantly surprised to be called up by coach Mandla Mashimbi exactly a year since her last 50-over match against the same Sri Lanka opponent in Potchefstroom in the Northwest Province. And finally, Iga Swiatek says she has grown accustomed to the high pressure of expectations she shoulders each clay court season, and that she's grateful for the public's high hopes for her. The world number 2 is the most successful clay court player of her generation and has won the French Open 4 times. Swiatek is having a subpar season, but she has also a chance to turn her year around at the Madrid Open, where she's the defending champion and will be hoping to defend it for a second time. The 23-year-old Pole kicked off her clay season with a quarterfinal appearance in Stuttgart just last week, where she lost to eventual champion Jelena Ostapenko for a 6th time in 6 matches with the Latvian. So while she's also feeling good in practice, Swiatek is still waiting for confirmation she can hit her peak level in her preferred surface. And that's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, just send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, call us. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibu Di Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
We'd love to hear your views on social media. Do find us on the platforms of X, of Instagram and TikTok. Our handles there are at Channel Africa 1, and we are also on Facebook as Channel Africa. Let's get our update in terms of the world of business now. Here's Eva Chipa with your details.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning and thank you, Asanda. South Africa's Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, has reversed the 0.5% value-added tax increase that he announced during the budget speech in March. VAT will remain at 15%. In a statement issued by National Treasury at midnight, the decision to forego the increase follows extensive consultations with political parties and careful consideration of the recommendations of the parliamentary committees. National Treasury says the withdrawal of VAT will result in an estimated revenue shortfall of around 75 billion rand over the next 3 years. It says the decision not to increase VAT means that the measures to cushion lower income households against the potential negative impact of the tax increase will also be reversed. Tepo Mwai reports.
According to the statement, the initial proposal for an increase to the VAT rate was motivated by the urgent need to restore the funding of critical frontline services that had suffered reduction necessitated by the country's constrained fiscal position. It says the ministry has received many suggestions, however, they do not provide an immediate avenue for further revenue in the short term to replace a VAT increase. The National Treasury, however, says it will consider this and other proposals as mechanisms to increase the resources available.
South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile says the main aim of the national budget and the approval of the fiscal framework is to enable government to implement its policies. Mashatile was a keynote speaker at a roundtable discussion organized by the Financial Fiscal Commission in Cape Town. The debate was held to reflect on the implications of the 2025-26 budget, including the adoption of the fiscal framework. Mashatile says part of the budget allocation is to bring much-needed resources for public use.
The national budget is a primary tool a government uses to plan and implement its policies, translating them into tangible deliverables and programs. It provides the resources needed for essential public services such as education, healthcare, and defense. And it also allows for prioritization of government spending based on socio-economic needs and political commitments. Hence, passing a budget is not an easy task. I say this because I have first-hand experience from my time as a chairperson of the Appropriations Committee.
Meanwhile, Mashatile says National Treasury's decision of allocating money to government departments for spending cannot be taken as an easy task. He says critics of the National Treasury, especially around the tabling of the budget for the 2025-26 financial year, should not be dismissed without a clear understanding of how the institution operates.
The responsibility of leading the Treasury and its institutions is not a simple undertaking. The success in this area of work requires that we chart fiscal pathways, which involves planning and implementing microeconomic policy strategies to achieve our goal of building a non-racial, non-sexist, united, democratic and prosperous society.
Three government departments in South Africa, the Department of Basic Education, Treasury and Higher Education and Training, have 21 days to respond to the South African Democratic Teachers Union memorandum, which was handed over to them yesterday. The union embarked on a national march in the country's capital, Pretoria. They protested on austerity measures in the public service, especially in the Department of Education. Sisi Sikhalo reports.
The General Secretary of SADC, Dr. Ngwena Maluleke, says they will give the department 21 days to engage on their grievances, and failure to their demand be met, they will then embark on a strike. Amongst their grievances is the employment of teachers, safety and poor infrastructure in schools. Some schools still use pit latrines 30 years into the country's democracy. The first memorandum has been accepted by representatives from the Department of Basic Education at their offices in Pretoria. For Channel Africa News, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Pretoria, South Africa.
And lastly, Vedanta Resources is considering a U.S. public listing for Zambian unit Kankola copper mines as one of its options to try raise about $1 billion for mine development. The miner, owned by Indian billionaire Anil Agrawal, has hired Barclays and Citigroup to advise on the plans for initial public offering. Vedanta is considering New York as one of the options to list KCM, as the Zambian unit is known. Sources say discussions are at an early stage and a timeline is not yet finalized. Taking a first look at your financial indicators this morning, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 607. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 59. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 65, and in Zambia, it's 28 kwacha 44. To the BRICS countries now, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 71. Russia, 82 rubles 51. In India, it's 85 rupees 40. China, 7 yuan 29, and in South Africa, it's 18 rand 59 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is standing at $3,342, platinum at $969 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $66.18 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, good morning. I'm Eva Chipa.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. G20 in Africa. Exclusive to Channel Africa.
There's
6:46 Central African time, and it's time for our G20 fact of the day. Now, South Africa has formed G20 meetings of the Agriculture Working Group together with the Food and Security Task Force, where a series of international meetings are held, and these meetings focus on 4 key priorities, and they are namely the promotion of policies and investments that drive inclusive market participation towards improved food and nutrition security, empowering youth and women in agri-food systems, fostering innovation and technology transfer in agriculture and agro-processing, and building climate resilience for sustainable agricultural production. And that is our G20 fact for this morning.
G20 in Africa. Exclusive to Channel Africa. Championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
South African Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago has suggested narrowing the agenda and establishing better processes for the G20 for it to reclaim its impact. Kganyago delivered the keynote address at an event in Washington for the 2025 spring meetings of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, alongside the G20 finance track ministers and central bank governors meetings. He says by streamlining policies or priorities, the meetings will be solutions-driven dialogues and will help navigate the current global challenges. This report by Nosipho Khatebe.
Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago has emphasized the importance of the G20 as a platform for economic cooperation. Addressing those gathered at the Brookings Institute discussion on strengthening global economic cooperation for a changing world, the unique role of the G20, Kganyago took the opportunity to highlight this point.
The G20 has demonstrated its value during crises, most notably at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, where it served as a central forum for coordinating responses and mobilizing finance. It has strengthened the global financial safety net with a better resourced International Monetary Fund at its center, and has facilitated expanded resource commitments for the multilateral development banks.
But Kganyago says once we're no longer in the throes of a crisis, it becomes harder to find purpose.
When we say, for instance, that the G20's relevance is fading, I think we mean that the agenda, always rich in topics, is overloaded and too complex. While there are many agenda items suitable for recent technocratic discussions, such as improving payment systems or helping heavily indebted poor countries, the G20 cannot effectively address itself to all of them.
The governor drew attention to the need for more focused agenda setting, supported by better processes.
Each year we have a new presidency, and each presidency wants to make its mark by putting new issues on the table. This means we add more than we subtract, because the G20 is powerful, is prestigious, and global. It is tempting to bring to it all the problems of the world. It does not follow, however, that just because something is important, it should be on the G20's agenda. There are many important issues for which the G20 is not the right forum.
Meanwhile, speaking at a panel during the same event, Treasury Director General Duncan Pieterse outlined what success would look like for South Africa's G20 presidency.
So I think for us, what success looks like is a situation where there's enough traction on some of the multi-year elements of the G20, and those are being pushed forward, like the MDB reform agenda, but also that we leave some institutional legacy around the continent, its growth and development, and how that translates beyond our presidency into future presidencies as well.
With the changing geopolitical landscape, the importance of the G20 has come into sharp focus. Nosipho Khatebe, SABC News, Johannesburg.
All right, it's 6:51 Central African time. Asanda, a story that we're busy watching now, and it's fascinating what can happen in a few days. But the South African Finance Minister, as we heard from Eva Chipa a short while ago, National Treasury has issued a statement about 18-20 minutes ago that the Finance Minister has decided to withdraw and reverse his decision to increase VAT in South Africa. That is major. I mean, that's major. And has got political implications as well beyond just us as citizens.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be a lot of commentary on that, I'm sure, on our social media platforms. And we encourage people to actually do share their views on that as well. And we'll have analysis in the next hour.
I can't wait to hear. In the meantime, the South African Democratic Teachers Union, SADTU, has threatened to embark on a massive strike that should their demands not be met within 21 days. The union embarked on a march on Wednesday to protest against the austerity measures that they claim are undermining public service delivery and crippling the country's education system. Sisi Sakhalo was at the march and has more on the story.
Members of one of South Africa's biggest teacher union braved the cold temperatures in the capital city of Pretoria to march to at least 3 departments to protest about budget cuts. The government departments in South Africa are National Treasury, Department of Basic Education, and Department of Higher Education and Training. The union says the budget cuts affect the education system negatively. The effects of it include increased learner-to-teacher ratios, lack of school infrastructure like halls, libraries and laboratories, shortage of classrooms and toilets, and general dilapidation of buildings, including safety in the schools. Embarking on a march, SADU called on government to dare not touch education. General Secretary of SADU is Dr. Mungwena Maluleke.
We are giving them 21 days to engage and make sure that they attend to all these problems that we are giving them. There are quite a number of those problems that we are giving them. And we are saying this is the first warning. So the warning shot is that this is a march and thereafter we'll be embarking on a strike.
The union was supported by the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, of which SADU is an affiliate. The president of the federation, Zingiswa Losi, promised them that they will not look away while educators are suffering in the country.
As a federation, your federation, COSATU, we are here today to say to Treasury, we are not here for polite conversations. We are here to confront the enemy of our people, and that is the austerity. Comrades, these budget cuts are an assault on our children. They are an assault in our teachers. They are an assault to our community. They are an assault to the poor and the working class. And they are an assault to this country. And as a federation and as SADU are saying, we will not take it lying down.
The memorandums from the union were accepted by representatives from the said departments. Stadim Gomezulu accepted memorandums for 2 departments.
I am here to accept and sign and acknowledge the 2 memoranda to the Ministry of Finance and to the Ministry of Higher Education and Training. I put it upon myself to make sure that these memoranda reaches the 2 esteemed offices, and I think you have given them 21 days. Is that right? 20 days left. 20 left. Or it's 20, no more 21. So, comrades, I will make sure that the memoranda reaches the offices and you get the responses. From Treasury, I can put my head on the block. We will respond within 21 days, but we will also ensure that the jihad follow suit and respond.
COSATU also hinted that they will also march if the public sector workers continue to suffer consequences of budget cuts. For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Pretoria, South Africa.
The Electoral Commission of South Africa says it's unlikely that electronic voting will be used in the upcoming local government elections. Officials from the IEC gave an update on its preparations heading to the elections. The Commission recently held an e-voting conference where it looked at the feasibility of moving from paper-based elections to electronic. Tlantla Mahlangu has more.
In March this year, the Commission hosted an international conference on the feasibility of electronic voting in South Africa. At the conference, the Commission launched a discussion document to start a country discussion on the use of technology in the elections. The policy discussion document assessed reasons for considering the introduction of e-voting in South Africa, the relevant constitutional principles, policy and legal frameworks that must precede the introduction of e-voting in the country, and available e-voting options, their technologies and cost implications, amongst others. The IEC's Chief Electoral Officer, Saima Mabolo, says while the conference was successful, it's still too early to overhaul the country's electoral system.
There is no decision to implement e-voting. It's a matter that the country can't ignore. It's something that we need to debate, to look at the relative strengths and weaknesses, and to see what model, if we were to implement it, what model will be best suitable to our country, given the technological penetration, which is differentiated for different areas in the country. The fact that the digital economy is uneven throughout the country. So those are the issues that must be taken into account in the conversation and in informing a decision whether such implementation is necessary.
The Commission says the low rate of registrations of young people during elections remains a concern. Mamabolo says the Commission will continue with efforts to engage South Africa's youth in electoral processes, ensuring that young persons understand their power and responsibility as voters.
In recognition of the youthful character of the country's population, the Commission persists with civic education drives targeting young learners and students across the country. The drill will focus on all university campuses and 180 technical and vocational training colleges, as well as private colleges nationwide. This ensuring that young persons are not only informed, but also actively participate in electoral processes. Additionally, the Commission is deploying campus-based registration ambassadors to assist students at the various tertiary institutions to register and update their registration details. This is crucial for ensuring that students are correctly registered and can vote at the correct voting station in future elections.
The minister in the presidency, Kumbuzo Nchaveni, recently reported that the next municipal elections will be held between the 2nd of November this year and the 1st of February in 2027. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Nhlanhla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
It's 7 o'clock Central African time, which means it's the second hour of Rise and Shine right here on Channel Africa, where we bring you the African perspective. Top of the morning to you. My name is Peter Ndoro. Good morning, Asanda, Beda.
Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us for this second hour of Rise and Shine. And we are coming to you from DSTV in terms of broadcasting platforms. DSTV 802, OpenView 628 on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as SABC Plus. That's the app that you can find us at. This coming hour, we'll be looking at the South Africa's Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, saying that Treasury has decided to reverse the 0.5% value-added tax increase. And we'll get reaction in terms of that story from different members representing different groups. Also, Zelensky, that is the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, is due to arrive in South Africa today. And we'll be looking at that as well. And more stories, of course, coming up after the news and the sports headlines. So we start with Onele Nzinzi, and then Musubudi Makura will give us the sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Ukrainian ambassador to South Africa, Lyubov Abravitova, says they will continue to seek global support to end the Russian aggression in Ukraine. Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine more than 3 years ago. This comes as President Cyril Ramaphosa gears up to host his Ukrainian counterpart, President Volodymyr Zelensky, at the Union Buildings in Pretoria today. Zelensky's official visit will be the first by a head of state from Ukraine. Ramaphosa was part of the Africa Peace Initiative to Ukraine on the 16th of June 2023. Abravitova says this is historic.
This is the first visit of President of Ukraine to South Africa and first visit of President Zelensky to Africa as well. Moreover, it's happening in the very important months of freedom. I think this is not coincidental, and we definitely will speak a lot about freedom, human rights, about the international law.
Meanwhile, protests are expected from political parties in South Africa as the country President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to host President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky on an official visit to the country in Pretoria today. The official visit to the country by Zelensky is the first by head of state from Ukraine. Sisi Sakhalo reports.
The Umkhonto weSizwe Party have vowed to protest today in Pretoria and use any other means to express solidarity with the Russian Federation. They have described Zelensky as a NATO puppet. The South African Communist Party have also their opposition about the visit. The party in Gauteng province says it will also be demonstrating outside the Ukrainian embassy in Pretoria. For Channel Africa News, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Police in South Africa say they have seized 60 unpolished diamonds and arrested over 360 suspects across the country this past week. This happened during Operation Vala Umgodi, targeting illegal mining activities. The suspects face charges including murder, attempted murder, unlawful possession of explosives, and possession of suspected stolen property. National Police spokesperson Amanda van Wyk says illegal mining equipment was also seized.
In the Northern Cape, 21 unpolished diamonds have been seized in Kleinseer on the 15th of April, leading to the arrest of 4 suspects. Within days, the team seized 39 more unpolished diamonds and arrested 5 suspects on the R355 en route to Port Nolloth on the 21st of April. Other items seized during Vala Umgodi operations in the past week include 5 unlicensed firearms, 34 rounds of ammunition, and 15 vehicles that include sedans, bakkies, trucks, and trailers.
Authorities in Benin say militants killed 54 soldiers last week in an attack near its border with Burkina Faso and Niger. Authorities from the West African country had previously said that only 8 troops were killed. The revised figure makes it the deadliest known attack since militants began operating in the region at the beginning of the decade. Lastly, India has closed its main border crossing with Pakistan over Tuesday's attack on tourists in the Indian-administered Kashmir region, which killed 26 people. Authorities say 4 gunmen emerged from the forest at a resort near the town of Pahalgam and opened fire on visitors, but only targeting man. Delhi has long accused Pakistan of supporting armed groups in the Muslim-majority region, but Pakistan has strongly denied. The BBC's Yogita Limai.
This is a region that's not a stranger to conflict. It's faced an armed insurgency for more than 35 years. But rarely have we seen an attack directed at tourists on this scale.
Locals marched on the streets condemning the attack. "Stop the brutal murder of our guests," they chanted. Indian security forces are still searching for the attackers. What's happened will have deep ramifications for the region and for the already fraught ties between India and Pakistan.
Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Zimbabwe won their first test match in 4 years with a 3-wicket victory over Bangladesh, while Arsenal held by Crystal Palace to leave Liverpool needing just 1 point to win the Premier League title. Details of these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is due to arrive in South Africa today. This will be Zelensky's first and official visit to the country. The war between Ukraine and Russia is expected to be top of the agenda as he meets with President Cyril Ramaphosa. The United States-led peace efforts appear to have hit another roadblock. U.S. President Donald Trump sought to chastise the Ukrainian leader for saying his country would not recognize Russia's occupation of Crimea as part of any future peace deal after proposals were reportedly suggested for Ukraine to accept Moscow's control of territories annexed by Russia, a move that would essentially freeze the front lines of the war. Sherwin Bryce Peace filed this report.
President Zelensky's arrival in South Africa is framed by his hosts as an opportunity to discuss and expand bilateral cooperation, but also with the objective of supporting efforts towards a lasting peace, efforts currently led by the United States that expressed frustration in recent days. This was President Trump late last week.
If for some reason one of the two parties makes it very difficult, we're just going to say you're foolish, you're fools, you're horrible people, and we're going to just take a pass. But hopefully we won't have to do that.
His Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, was even more forthright.
What we're talking about here is avoiding thousands and thousands of people from dying over the next year. We're trying to avoid that. So if they're serious about peace, either side or both, we want to help. If it's not going to happen, then we're just going to move on.
And while Russian President Vladimir Putin has been slow to agree a ceasefire with Ukraine, it's Zelensky that has been on the receiving end of public scoldings from the US president, who vented his irritation at these remarks by the Ukrainian leader on Tuesday.
Ukraine does not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea. There's nothing to talk about. This is beyond our constitution. It's our territory, the territory of the people of Ukraine. As soon as we start talking about Crimea, about our sovereign territories, we enter a format that Russia wants, which is to drag out the war, because it will not be possible to quickly agree on everything.
Cue President Trump on social media calling the statement harmful to the peace negotiations, arguing that Crimea was lost when former President Barack Obama was in office, that it's inflammatory statements like Zelensky's that make it difficult to settle the war, further stating that they were very close to a deal, but that the man with no cards to play should finally get it done, reprising the sharp tone he delivered to the Ukrainian leader in the Oval Office in late February.
You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Expectations of a broader ceasefire deal in the short term, as promised by Trump, appearing to fade with each day, as analyst James Nixie of international affairs think tank Chatham House explains.
The Americans can have certain demands and the Russians can have certain demands, but they're both finding out that whatever they try to negotiate above the heads of the Ukrainians will not necessarily come to realization. The Ukrainians have proven themselves skillful military and diplomatic players, and that's continuing. I'm not suggesting that they are invulnerable. They can continue this war ad infinitum. Possibly the Russians can even outlast them. I'll concede that point, but not yet. Not for 2025. The US just wants any deal, and that it doesn't matter whether it's a good deal for Ukraine or a good deal for Russia. They want to be able to show that they are a broker and maybe a power player, that they can have an influence on events. There's a real difference there, because for the Ukrainians, a bad deal is worse than no deal.
And with President Zelensky in South Africa, President Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff was expected back in Moscow this week for a new round of talks with President Putin. Listen to Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov.
If it happens, we will inform you. For now, I can't say anything concrete on this topic. The U.S. continue their mediation efforts, and we welcome it without a doubt. Also, and I repeat it once again, we will continue our contacts. There are a lot of nuances around possible settlement which should be discussed, and where the positions should be narrowed and so on. So, we will continue this work.
Ending wars is often far more complicated than starting them. And while this will be President Zelensky's first visit to South Africa, it will not be the first time he's met in person with President Cyril Ramaphosa, who led a peace delegation of African leaders to Ukraine in June of 2023, while the two also met on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York. Thursday's meeting at the Union buildings also follows a call between Presidents Ramaphosa and Putin on Monday. The South African readout says they committed to working together towards a peaceful resolution of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and that Pretoria would continue engaging all interested parties on finding a path to peace. While the Kremlin said Putin outlined Russia's position on the need to address the root causes of the conflict and ensure Russia's security interests. I'm Sherwin Bryce-Pease in New York.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
And now for some news that South Africans will wake up to this morning and welcome, no doubt. South Africa's Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana says that the Treasury has decided to reverse the 0.5% value-added tax increase that it had tabled for the 1st of May. In a statement released overnight, the minister, Enoch Godongwana, says that he has written to the National Assembly Speaker indicating the decision to reverse the VAT increase, which was supposed to come into effect next month. This means that VAT will remain at 15%. And the statement made by Treasury last night says that the decision to forego this increase follows extensive consultations with political parties and careful considerations of the recommendations of the parliamentary committees. By not increasing VAT, estimated revenue will be short by around 75 billion rand over the medium term. Well, to discuss this a little further, we're now joined on the line by the Democratic Alliance Member of Parliament and spokesperson, Willie Okamp. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Peter. Thanks for having me.
So I guess this is what you've been fighting for all along. You must be delighted.
Yes, we certainly are. This announcement by the Minister of Finance to stop the implementation of the VAT increase follows directly after the lawyers acting for the Minister have yesterday approached the DA's lawyers proposing an out-of-court settlement in the matter that the DA brought to interdict the VAT increase scheduled for 1 May. And from the Democratic Alliance side, we want to make it clear that we said from day one that we will not support any tax increases. And we want to thank everybody out there that really supported us throughout this whole fight. The DA knew that the only way in which this VAT hike, as well as the shambolic parliamentary procedures that were followed by the ANC and Action SA and BOSA and all the other smaller parties that voted this through, could be stopped. The only way that it could be stopped was to take this matter to court. And after presenting our case on Tuesday, it became clear to everyone, including the Minister, that the DA will be successful in that court case. So the Minister approached us yesterday via his lawyers for an out-of-court settlement. We are waiting formal written settlement offer from the Minister, and we will obviously respond as soon as we have seen that.
All right. Help us understand, because in my mind, a reversal is not quite the same thing as... Because when you went to court, you were saying it was procedurally incorrect the way it was done, rather than whether they could increase VAT or not. Am I mistaken? Is that the correct assumption?
You are correct. We went to court on the basis of two things. First, the procedural incorrectness that was followed on the 1st of April's meeting of the Standing Committee on Finance as well as the Select Committee on Finance, where we say that they were in breach of Section 8 of the Money Bills Act that says there must be a clear understanding of what is being voted on. And I think if you followed the court case on Tuesday, it was clear that we made that case, that when the fiscal framework was voted on, it was not clear to members of parliament what they are actually voting on. So that process will now have to start afresh. And then the second leg of the application was the challenging the constitutionality of Section 7.4 of the VAT Act, which gives the right to the minister to unilaterally raise taxes. And what the DA is saying is that it is unconstitutional. If you look at the judgments in previous constitutional court judgments, where it said that the executive of South Africa does not have the right to enact tax increases, but that it must be done by the spheres of government. So we will still carry on with the constitutionality action on this court case, and we, as I said, are awaiting the settlement agreement to see what's going on. For us, the main thing is that the minister has now announced that the implementation of the increased VAT on the 1st of May will now be stopped, and we are awaiting in anticipation their formal written settlement offer to us.
All right. Okay. So now that we're clear, and I need to be clear in my mind, as many listeners might want to know, does that mean that this issue can be raised again following the correct procedures, or is your understanding that this is the end of the VAT story now?
I believe that this is the start of the end of the VAT story. As I said, the fiscal framework will now have to be re-voted on. You will remember that the fiscal framework that was voted on the 1st of April stated that the VAT increase as it was presented by the Minister of Finance has been accepted. Now, certain parties thought that they can accept the fiscal framework without amending it and then come with some regulations afterwards that will have an effect on that. And that is not how the process works. So this fiscal framework, in all probability, will now have to be put again in front of the Portfolio Committee in Parliament, and then there will be an amendment made. The amendment, so let me start there. The fiscal framework was presented by the Minister, and he said that there will be an increase in VAT. Now it is Parliament's job to make an amendment to that fiscal framework and say clearly that there will not be an increase in VAT, and then Parliament will have to vote on that amendment. So the fiscal framework needs to be amended, and then Parliament needs to vote on this again.
So, in your view, what you're saying is that there were some parties that voted with the ANC, but they didn't know what they were voting for. Are you suggesting that had they known what they were voting for, they were never going to pass this bill at all?
I cannot talk on behalf of the other parties. It was either they were misled or they knew exactly what they were doing, but they just didn't care. The fact of the matter is that the fiscal framework was voted through by the ANC with the help of parties outside of the GNU, parties like Action SA and like Bosa of Musi Maimane, and then other parties of the likes of the Patriotic Alliance and the IFP that's within the GNU also voted for this. The fact of the matter is that you cannot, when you sit in that Portfolio Committee, you've got one of two choices. You can either adopt the fiscal framework or you can amend it. There's no provision for adopting the fiscal framework and ex post facto afterwards come and say, we have now adopted this, but we would like certain changes to be made. If you want changes to the fiscal framework to have been made, you should have made an amendment proposal on which the committee first and then Parliament the next day would have voted on.
All right, and perhaps a final question, and it is speculation. Do you think that there's more politics to this than there is legal aspects?
Well, the Democratic Alliance followed the legal aspects. We're not here to play politics. We are here to act in the best interest of every South African. And when we brought this legal action, we did it based on the facts of what happened, not on the politics. So it's a pity that some party did play politics. Yeah, I've got absolutely no doubt about it. I think there are parties that really just wanted to do anything irrespective of the outcome, but if they can try and damage the DA in the process, they would go for it. That is cheap politicking, and I think there's a lot of parties that really want to become relevant. They have not done well in the elections, and they are really trying their utmost best to get attention. This just showed again that a vote for smaller parties in a lot of instances is a vote for the ANC. The Democratic Alliance stood firm on this thing from the start. We were the party that brought this to court. It was the minister's lawyers that approached our lawyers yesterday, and the mere fact that we have been approached for with a request for a settlement out of court shows you that even the minister could see that he's got problems with this court application. So we are so proud of the work that the Democratic Alliance has done here. But it's very important, Peter, that we must say that it's not only the Democratic Alliance. It's each and every South African that stood with us in this fight. South Africans out there made it clear that they cannot be taxed any further. The poorest of the poor cannot afford this. And South Africa needed to have a strong party like the DA to stand up for it and to make sure that this VAT increase does not go through.
Beda Ocamp, pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much indeed for your time.
Thank you, Peter.
That's the national spokesperson for the Democratic Alliance, a member of Parliament, Beda Ocamp, from the Democratic Alliance.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
All right, let's go to Ivory Coast now, and where we talk about a court that has ordered the removal of the main opposition leader from the electoral roll, declaring him ineligible to in October's presidential election. The Court of First Instance of Abidjan Plateau cited that Tidjane Thiam, the president of the opposition Democratic Party of Ivory Coast, or PDCI, forfeited his Ivory Coast nationality when he acquired French citizenship in 1987. The decision comes a week after his party endorsed him as their candidate in the presidential election scheduled for later this year on October 25th. For more on this decision, we're joined on the line by Channel Africa's correspondent in Ivory Coast, Soleil Marius Kouassi. Thank you so much for joining us, Soleil. How are you this morning?
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
We apologize for that cut in that previous story. We'll try and get to our guest later in the show, or maybe in the next hour. We'll see how that goes. But let's talk in terms of national matters now here in South Africa. The economy has been struggling over the past 3 years, with the country's gross domestic product, or GDP, growth being consistently downgraded. This downturn reflects policymakers' reluctance to address persistent issues such as infrastructure decay and fiscal strain, which have worsened over time and turned into a formidable challenge. For the first time in 30 years of democracy, the Southern African nation hit a budget deadlock. This impasse delayed the adoption of the national budget and exposed rifts within the coalition government, highlighting the difficulty of aligning a divided GNU. Ralph Mateja is an economist at GIS Reports, and he now joins us on the line. Ralph, good morning to you, and thank you for making time.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right, South Africa's economy has been struggling for the past 3 years. What can we attribute this to?
I think, if you look at our growth trajectory, it's been very difficult for us to grow above 2%. And sometimes you find that projections are that we'll be looking at 2.5%, and then you have issues coming in, and you have downgrading. You have the IMF coming in and saying that, hold on, you are not going to make it above 1%. Consistently recently, we have even been finding it very difficult to breach that 1% mark when it comes to economic growth. And now you were just discussing the question of that, which is about what is actually in this budget. Is it just about the normal increment, or are we looking at some of the issues that were raised, such as dealing with cutting the public sector wage bill, and also even dealing with the growing deficit? Those things are not found in this budget, which is also bringing in this deadlock to be saying, other parties are saying that, but we are continuing with business as usual. We are just piling money where we are not performing. We are not growing as we should be. And I was looking in the last few days as well, the IMF came back and even said that the tariffs are going to have us reduce our outlook in terms of growth as well, the U.S. tariffs as well. And they find us not doing so well, and we are in a worse position as well. So some of the fundamentals, people have been saying that, look, you got to bite the bullet and deal with this fiscal framework, review this fiscal framework. Don't continue with the same fiscal framework. You cannot continue with the same priorities that you have not been, through which you have not been able to attain the necessary growth. It's quite a concern. When your growth is way below your population growth, you're heading into trouble. Government expenditure, at some point, you get to a point where you cannot sustain it. Where are we going to get the money now? We're talking about VAT increase, further taxation, which some are saying that It is going to suppress our growth as well. So we are going in circle on this. And I think this has been going on for quite a while, maybe more than 5 years. I remember at some point speaking to rating agencies, your S&P, your Moody's, they were saying that South Africa need to cut its budget, need to show more efficiency in the way in which we are spending. But for the first time, actually, this has come to a point where parties are saying no to the budget, and it's quite interesting. It's quite incredible. This has not happened before. But it's not just about parties saying or disagreeing with the VAT. It's also at the depth of it is parties actually saying that we don't agree to the funding priorities that have been identified, and the ANC has been holding on, not willing to actually review and not willing to be saying this is what we are going to be doing to get the economy to grow. It's more of the same, and I think it is quite commendable that South Africa's political parties have come forth and said we are not going to go along with this.
As you say, rating agencies have downgraded the country. You mentioned the IMF, as part of that, and investment grade had gone low to medium risk. Now, with this news with Treasury having reversed the proposed increase to our VAT, does this offer a glimmer of hope for the South African economy when it comes to attracting investment into the country?
Tax increase never attract investment. I mean, most people would be aware of that actually tax increase never does that, and you're actually discouraging people. We are coming out as a country that has got relatively higher tax within the emerging markets, and we coupled with other fundamentals that have been raised by investors, and South African companies are concerned about this as well. Are some of the requirements that have got to do with black economic empowerment. This is not to say you have to abandon the whole thing altogether, but it is to say, are you creating a favorable environment for investors? Some companies have been leaving South Africa's shores, and some are quite critical companies that have not been able to survive so well. We know about the case of ArcelorMittal recently. Although government has pushed back on ArcelorMittal leaving South Africa, government coming with bailouts. How long are you going to be able to do that? So that increase amidst a shrinking economy, the GDP falling, it's just not a good recipe. It's something that actually says you need to do something afresh here. The debt level as well is becoming quite a problem. I mean, not just a question of a household, but we borrow. Remember during the COVID-19, we had this challenge whereby we went to the World Bank and borrowed. Our economy did not perform so well, and you are going to service the debt. And as you service the debt, you are not going to be spending on infrastructure because the debt servicing commitment gets to be quite high. Look at the level of infrastructure as well. The question is, I think the difficulty within the GNU is that as much as there is a lot of talk, you don't get a sense of a renewed sense of urgency where one could be saying that let's do it differently, let's listen to each other, let's work and do it differently. Controversially, you have the social security is carrying on. Of course, you are at the point where you cannot just discontinue. But how are you going to fund it? That's what the problem is.
All right, let's leave it there for today. Thanks again for your time, Ralph.
Pleasure.
Ralph Mateka is economist at GIS Reports, a global independent consultancy firm. It's 32 minutes past 7 Central African time. Let's say good morning to Onele Nzinzi with our news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in South Africa for a working visit. Zelensky will meet with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in Pretoria. This visit comes as Ukraine faces increasing pressure to agree to tough terms for a peace deal with Russia proposed by U.S. President Donald Trump's negotiators. The U.S. senior advisor for Africa says he believes a peace settlement in the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo is likely. Masad Boulos, who recently met the Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi and the Rwandan leader Paul Kagame, said both sides were serious. And the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas says Hamas must hand over its weapons and control of the Gaza Strip to its national authority. Abbas has urged the group to release the hostages it is holding, saying Hamas was giving Israel a pretext to kill Palestinians. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And it's time now to get another look at what's been happening in sport as we say good morning once again to Musubudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning once again from the sports desk. We'll start with cricket. So Zimbabwe won their first test match in 4 years with a 3-wicket victory over Bangladesh in Sylhet yesterday. Now chasing 174, the tourists slipped to 95 for the loss of no wicket, to then 161 for 7, enduring a nervous finish before Wesley Madhevere closed the match off with a 4. Now Zimbabwe set up the victory in the morning session of the final day, reducing Bangladesh from 194 for 4 to 255 all out, with player of the match Blessing Mozi Rambani taking 6 wickets for the loss of 6 wickets for 72 runs. So Zimbabwe will now seek a series victory in the second and final test beginning in Chattogram next week Monday. It will also be their first series victory since beating Bangladesh in a one-off test in August of 2011, while they were facing the same opponents for the last multi-match series victory in 2004. Now, following this tour, they will fly out to England to play in a one-off test match at Trent Bridge, starting officially on the 22nd of this month. They last toured England for test matches in 2003, losing at Lord's as well as Chester Lee Street. In football news now, Crystal Palace twice came from behind to draw at the second-placed Arsenal and leave Liverpool 1 point from just being crowned Premier League champions for a second time in 5 seasons. So a draw against Tottenham Hotspur at Anfield this coming Sunday would be enough for Arne Slot's side, who lead Arsenal by 12 points to clinch their 20th league title, equaling Manchester United's current record. So both Arsenal as well as Palace's main focus is on their cup exploits, with the Gunners in the UEFA Champions League semi-finals and the Eagles at the same stage in the FA Cup. And both managers rested key players last night. Mikel Arteta was disappointed with the result as well as performance.
Yeah, disappointed with results and with the performance as well. I think we never got the consistency in many areas to completely dominate the game. We always had the feeling that, we had the ball, we had possession, we went in front twice, but the game wasn't grabbed, it wasn't dominated and controlled in the way that we normally do, because we were below the standards in some areas. And when you are not at your best, but you are 2 times ahead, you have to be able to see the game off.
Right, back home now, Athletics South Africa's Athletes Commission chairperson Hendrik Mokhanyetsi has confirmed that several top athletes will not participate in the national championships as they are to compete in the Diamond League meeting in China this coming Saturday. So among those absent are 100-meter champion Akani Simbeni, 110-meter hurdles champion Marne Fourie, javelin champion Joanne van Dijk, Lyth Pillay, the 400-meter champion, as well as leading middle distance runner Ryan Pahlele. So the nationals will take place at the Park MacArthur Stadium from today in the capital city Pretoria until Saturday, and Mokhanyetsi says the unavailability of these athletes create an opportunity for new champions to be created.
Yeah, that event is up for grabs, and also to thank the nation and the people who love athletics that a special exemption was given to few athletes that who presented their case to us, and then based on the merit of the case, we have approved their exemptions that they won't be competing at the championship. There's too much at stake for all these events that the previous championships are not available, but it creates an opportunity for new champions, from the new champions.
At the same time, Mokhanyetsi has warned the athletes that travelling to China would be at their own risk, but also still offered words of encouragement, urging them to perform well at the Diamond League this coming Saturday. He also highlighted that ASA plans to select 3 athletes per event to meet the qualifying standards for the World Championships taking place in Tokyo, Japan in September of this year.
The message of support to the athletes that will be away, we're saying they must go there and perform and make sure they gain a lot of ranking points. That can also assist them at the end when we select the teams in terms of the world rankings. They must do their best and raise our flag very high. And we hold thumbs for them.
And finally, Iga Swiatek says she has grown accustomed to the high pressure of expectations she shoulders each clay court season, and that she's grateful for the public's high hopes for her. The world number 2 is the most successful clay court player of her generation and has won the French Open 4 times. Swiatek is having a subpar season but has a chance now to turn things around at the Madrid Open, where she is defending her title in a fortnight. Now, the 23-year-old Pole kicked off the clay court season with a quarterfinal appearance in Stuttgart just last week, where she lost to eventual champion Jelena Ostapenko for a 6th time in 6 meetings with the Latvian. Now, while she is feeling good in practice, Swiatek is still waiting for confirmation that she can hit her peak level on her preferred clay court surface. That's a wrap from the sports desk at this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. 7:39 a.m. Central African Time for Channel Africa Sport. I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África @ newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Time now for our business update here on Rise and Shine, and as we say good morning to Eva Chiba.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda. South Africa's Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, has reversed the 0.5% value-added tax increase that he announced during the budget speech in March. That will remain at 15%. In a statement issued by the National Treasury at midnight, the decision to forego the increase follows extensive consultations with political parties and careful consideration of the recommendations of the parliamentary committees. National Treasury says the withdrawal of the VAT will result in an estimated revenue shortfall of around $4 billion over the next 3 years. It says the decision not to increase VAT means that the measures to cushion lower income households against potential negative impact of the tax increase will also be reversed. Tipa Mungai reports.
According to the statement, the initial proposal for an increase to the VAT rate was motivated by the urgent need to restore the funding of critical frontline services that had suffered reduction necessitated by the country's constrained fiscal position. It says the ministry has received many suggestions, however, they do not provide an immediate avenue for further revenue in the short term to replace a VAT increase. The National Treasury, however, says it will consider this and other proposals as mechanisms to increase the resources available.
South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile says the main aim of the national budget and the approval of the fiscal framework is to enable government to implement its policies. Mashatile was a keynote speaker at a roundtable discussion organized by the Financial and Fiscal Commission in Cape Town. The debate was held to reflect on the implications of the 2025-26 budget, including the adoption of the fiscal framework. Mashatile says part of the budget allocation is to bring much-needed resources for public use.
The national budget is a primary tool a government uses to plan and implement its policies, translating them into tangible deliverables and programs. It provides the resources needed for essential public services such as education, healthcare, and defense, and it also allows for prioritization of government spending based on socio-economic needs and political commitments. Hence, passing a budget is not an easy task. I say this because I have first-hand experience from my time as a chairperson of the Appropriations Committee.
3 government departments in South Africa, the Department of Basic Education, Treasury, and Higher Education and Training, have 21 days to respond to the South African Democratic Teachers Union, SATU, the memorandum which was handed over to them yesterday. The union embarked on a national march in the country's capital, Pretoria. They protested on austerity measures in the public service, especially in the Department of Education. Sisi Sekgalo reports.
The General Secretary of SATU, Dr. Ngwena Maluleke, says they will give the department 21 days to engage on their grievances, and failure to their demands be met, they will then embark on a strike. Amongst their grievances is the employment of teachers, safety and poor infrastructure in schools. Some schools still use pit latrines 30 years into the country's democracy. The first memorandum has been accepted by a representative from the Department of Basic Education at their offices in Pretoria. For Channel Africa News, I'm Sisi Sekgalo in Pretoria, South Africa.
Vedanta Resources is considering a U.S. public listing for its Zambian unit Konkola Copper Mines as one of its options to try to raise $1 billion for mine development. The mine, owned by Indian billionaire Anil Agarwal, has hired Barclays and Citigroup to advise on the plans for an initial public offering. Vedanta is considering New York as one of the options to list KCM, as the Zambian unit is known. Sources say discussions are at an early stage and a timeline is yet to be finalized. And lastly, oil prices ticked up early this morning after falling nearly 2% in the previous session, with investors weighing a potential OPEC Plus output increase against conflict tariff signals from the White House and ongoing US-Iran nuclear talks. Brent crude futures rose 6 cents to $66.18 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude gained 7 cents and stands at $62.34 a barrel. Signs that the U.S. and China could be moving closer to trade talks gave prices some support. The Wall Street Journal reported that the White House would be willing to lower its tariffs on China to as low as 50% in order to open up negotiations. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 607. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 59. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 65. And in Zambia, it's 28 kwacha 44. So the BRICS countries now, where $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 reals 71. In Russia, 82 rubles 51. India, 85 rupees 40. China, 7 yuan 29. And in South Africa, it's 18 rand 59 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,342, platinum at $969 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $66.18 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2 711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, I'm Eva Chipa.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, has revised its forecast for sub-Saharan Africa, projecting the region's economic growth to ease to 3.8% this year. And this slowdown mirrors a more subdued global outlook, with the IMF also cutting its global growth projection to 2.8%. The downgrade is attributed to a sharp rise in tariffs and growing policy uncertainty, which the IMF says are weighing heavily on the global economy. Dimakatso Lishuro has the details.
There is no region in the world that will be left untainted by the fallout from the U.S. tariffs policy that is expected to slow global trade this year. The International Monetary Fund says Africa's economic growth will also be impacted as countries reel from the uncertainty brought by the constantly changing policy. The global economy is entering a new era as the global economic system that has operated for the last 80 years is being reset. IMF's chief economist Pierre-Olivier Gorinches noted.
Regional growth in sub-Saharan Africa improved significantly last year to 4%, and it will ease in 2025. And this is in line with a softer global outlook. And so we are seeing the same forces at play in the region as we are seeing more globally, and a downturn in the downward revision in our projection that is of the similar magnitude at about 0.4 percentage point.
Africa's advantage is the demographic dividend coming from having a young population. But are African countries able to leverage this and channel it towards economic growth? IMF's Denise Egan explains.
The answer there, first and foremost, depends on the structural reforms, the investment that's necessary on healthcare, on education, on human capital more generally, and also international cooperation.
Gorinches says if sustained, the increasing trade tensions and uncertainty will slow global economic growth significantly.
Under these reference forecasts, global growth will reach 2.8% this year and 3% next year, a cumulative downgrade of about 0.8 percentage point relative to our January 2025 WEO update. Under an alternative path that excludes the April tariff announcements, global growth would have seen only a modest downgrade to 3.2% this year. An escalation of trade tensions would further depress growth. Financial conditions could also tighten as markets react negatively to diminished growth prospects and increased uncertainty.
Concerns about the inflationary impact of the tariffs persist, and Gorinches says central banks will have to respond by increasing interest rates where necessary.
Monetary policy credibility will be key, especially where inflation expectations might de-anchor, and central bank independence remains a cornerstone. Many fiscal authorities will face new spending needs to bolster defense spending or to offset the trade dislocations likely to come. Some of the poorest countries, also hit with reduced official aid, could experience debt distress. Yet debt levels are still elevated, and most countries still need to rebuild fiscal space, including by implementing structural reforms.
The IMF also released the latest financial stability report. This report gives a comprehensive picture of the financial system's performance. The report comes as major indices across the world have come under pressure, losing ground mostly due to the U.S. trade policy. IMF financial counselor Tobias Adrian says increasing levels of uncertainty have triggered a sell-off in equity markets. This has seen increased global financial stability risks on the back of heightened economic policy uncertainty.
Market volatility has increased. We have seen some degree of deleveraging, but market functioning has been sound so far. So with higher volatility, we would expect asset prices to come down. But the functioning of how those asset prices adjusted has been very early to date.
Even with the current turbulence, emerging market currencies and capital flows remained steady, pointing to the resilience of these economies. For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakatso Lishuro in Johannesburg.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África @ newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa's Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mamoloko Kubai, has wrapped up the inaugural Justice Forum with a strong pledge to reform and strengthen the country's justice system. Speaking in Pretoria on Wednesday evening, the minister highlighted the need for decisive leadership, institutional reforms, and enhanced service delivery. The two-day forum held at the Bridget Mabandla Justice College followed a national tour of courts and service points aimed at identifying and addressing challenges within the justice system. Channel Africa's Michael Mbewe has more.
The Justice Forum was convened as a direct response to the challenges identified on the ground, bringing together senior leadership from across the sector to develop coordinated and sustainable solutions. The forum was attended by Minister Mamoloko Kubai, Deputy Minister Andries Nel, the Director General, Executive Management, provincial heads and senior officials from the Master's offices and State Attorney's offices. Justice Minister Kubai has lauded the gathering.
This has been quite good. It brought everybody from all the provinces. And most importantly, I think the colleagues themselves as well saw value in being able to raise the issues that frustrates them, because sometimes because the others are national, the others are in the provinces, they tend to feel neglected and not answered. So being here, it gives a sense of accountability, but also integration of our work across.
Recently, the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development showed 54 officials the door for various offences including corruption and maladministration. Kubai says officials will be subjected to lifestyle audits.
And then on the issue around corruption, we've dealt with it here, and as well as senior managers and all of us, raising the issue that, to be in an organization where people, whether through perception or action, experiences, and then they say there's corruption, it's not well. One of the issues that we've agreed is that the entirety of senior managers across the portfolio and its organizations will go through lifestyle audit. I had written to them previously. So Advocate Mutibi, as part of their work of lifestyle audit, was here explaining to the senior managers how the process will go. I will get the first report after 3 months in terms of the process itself. And in 2 offices, we've agreed that we will do full lifestyle audit.
The minister also clarified the comments she made days ago condemning the visit to a Malawian evangelist Shepherd Mushiri in his backyard by South Africa's opposition Umkhonto Wesizwe Party's General Secretary Floyd Shivambu.
Look, the issue that I was worried about, as I said in the statement, it's when people can think that it's okay to associate with criminals. It's okay to associate with the fugitive. The reality is that we have won a case in terms of extraditing Bushiri. He has a case to answer in South African shores. As much as Floyd is not a public rep and is not in government, but is a political leader that has influence, and we didn't want followers to think that is correct what is being done.
As the Justice Minister alluded, the department has brought in the Special Investigation Unit in an effort to curb corruption. SIU's head Andy Mutibi elaborates.
I came from SIU and our business. Our business is really in the anti-corruption sector. We would like to support the department in the anti-corruption initiatives. As you know, the country has a national anti-corruption strategy, so we are assisting departments generally to implement the national anti-corruption strategy, and in particular to work with them on really how we can prevent maladministration, malpractice and corruption. So we are really glad that the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development also has really shown eagerness in ensuring that we implement the strategy.
He says the SIU played a role on the Justice Department of investigating mischievous officials, leading to disciplinary actions being taken against them.
Yes, indeed. We have assisted the department in identifying some of the officials. And really it's important to note that, generally the officials in the department, do work and are committed to their work. But how is it that we assisted in identifying those? We've got investigations that we are conducting in the justice portfolio. We conduct investigations at masters, at state attorney. We also conduct at within the Department of Justice. There's a proclamation focusing on the building of courts, right? So at masters, for example, we identified several officials that really were guilty of misconduct, and then we referred them to the accounting officer of justice, which is the DG, to take action.
Mutibe has also welcomed the disciplinary actions taken by the minister.
Similar to state attorney and the others. So we were pleased when we saw, because generally in government we have seen that there's a measure of inaction in implementing disciplinary action. So when you see decisive action like that, it really is to be welcomed. So yes, indeed, we did play a role as part of our investigations in identifying those employees that are guilty of misconduct.
Meanwhile, the Deputy Director in the Legislature in the Department of Justice, Kalei Pillay, says the engagements were meaningful.
The deliberations went very well. It was very useful to engage with the heads of Master's Office, heads of State Attorney's Office, in other words, people on the ground, to understand the challenges and also to listen to their suggestions on how to improve matters.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
It's 8 o'clock Central African time. A very good morning to you and welcome to the third and final hour of Rise and Shine on this 24th of April. It's a Thursday as we look forward in South Africa to another long weekend. We said in our first hour on Monday having or being it a Freedom Day. So my name is Asanda Beda and we're coming to you live from our Johannesburg studios here in South Africa on DSTV 802, on OpenView 6 to 8, and on the www.channelafrica.co.za website. We are also on the SABC Plus app. A good morning to Peter Ndoro.
Good morning, Asanda. Yeah, happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
Yeah, we've got quite a lot coming up in the next half an hour, but I am looking forward to an interesting conversation with one of the presidential election candidates in Malawi. They go to the polls on the 16th, I think. And he was actually quite instrumental in shifting from the one-party state of Dr. Hastings Kamuzu Banda to becoming a multi-party state. And they did well in the first elections after that, but popularity not so much over time. But he's standing for elections this year, and we'll get the lowdown on his manifesto, his promises, and the fortunes of his party. I'll be talking to Chakufwa Chihana of the Afford Party, so stay with us for that. But first, it's time for
the news with Onele Nsinsi, and then sports headlines with Musibudi Makura.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Ukrainian ambassador to South Africa, Lyubov Abravitova, says they will continue to seek global support to end the Russian aggression in Ukraine. Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine more than 3 years ago. Zelensky officials' visit will be the first by a head of state from Ukraine. Ramaphosa was part of the Africa Peace Initiative to Ukraine on the 16th of June 2023. Abravitova says this is historic.
This is the first visit of President of Ukraine to South Africa and first visit of President Zelensky to Africa as well. Moreover, it's happening in the very important months of freedom. I think this is not coincidental, and we definitely will speak a lot about freedom, human rights, about the international law.
The Activists and Citizens Forum has labelled the alleged attempted assassination of South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile as a fabricated story. The forum argues that if the alleged incident did happen, the African National Congress Party would have been informed about it. This follows comments from the party's Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, that they didn't get any details report from Mashadile's office about the alleged incident. The forum spokesperson Dennis Bloom says Mashadile is seeking sympathy votes in the ANC ahead of the party's 2027 national conference.
If it was the truth, the country could have been upside down, turned upside down by the security forces, by the ANC itself. The ANC could have made big noise, but up until now, they are quiet. That's why we are saying this is a cooked up story. Okay.
The U.S. senior advisor for Africa says he believes a peace settlement in the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo is likely. Masad Boulos, who recently met the Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi and the Rwandan leader Paul Kagame, said both sides were serious. He added that the United States was interested in deals on critical minerals with both countries, but said that would need a lasting peace.
Our role is to encourage dialogue between both sides. Now I'm talking about the DRC and Rwanda side, but also internal dialogue within the DRC, such as a dialogue between the DRC government with the M23. This is happening now, and this is a very good development.
Authorities in Benin say militants killed 54 soldiers last week in an attack near its border with Burkina Faso and Niger. Authorities from the West African country had previously said that only 8 troops were killed. The revised figure makes it the deadliest known attack since militants began operating in the region at the beginning of the decade. Lastly, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas says Hamas must hand over its weapons and control of the Gaza Strip to its national authority. Abbas has urged the group to release the hostages it is holding, saying Hamas was giving Israel a pretext to kill Palestinians. Meanwhile, the Hamas-run Health Ministry and the Gaza Strip says 39 Palestinians have been killed in the past 24 hours in Israeli strikes. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, CAF President calls African football stakeholders to remain intentional in a bid to put the game on the continent among the best in the world, while Athletics South Africa confirmed that several top athletes will not participate in the national championships. I'll have details of these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
6 minutes past 8 Central African Time. Malawi stands at a political crossroads. On September the 16th, citizens will cast their ballots in a high-stakes presidential and legislative election, one widely seen as a test of the country's democratic maturity and appetite for change. President Lazarus Chakwera's rise to power in 2020 was hailed as a victory for democracy and accountability, but nearly 5 years on, his administration is facing growing discontent over economic hardship, unfulfilled promises, and repeated allegations of corruption. Among those challenging for the top seat is Enoch Chihana, who's the president of the Alliance for Democratic Democracy, or AFORD party, that played a historic role in Malawi's return to multi-party democracy and now seeks to reassert its relevance in a changing political landscape. Mr. Chihana joins us now to discuss his presidential bid, his vision for Malawi, and how his party plans to respond to the country's most pressing challenges. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Yes, good morning.
So I want us to start with your reflections of the state of Malawi today, politically, economically, and socially. What are you hearing from ordinary Malawians that you travel across the country meeting?
Indeed, Malawi stands at a crossroads, politically, economically, and socially. For the past 4 years and a half, Malawians have been facing a lot of challenges, and the country at the moment, we have food shortage, fuel shortage, unemployment is one of the highest in the Southern Africa. We are facing a lot of challenges, and we are going into elections on the 16th.
All right, so many citizens did vote for President Chakwera in 2020, hoping for change. In your view, where has his administration fallen short?
In fact, one of the challenges is that they have not concentrated on what we promised Malawians, because Alliance for Democracy Forward was part and parcel of the Council Alliance, which ushered Chakwera into power. And we decided to pull out because what was happening is not what we promised Malawians. One, we promised Malawians food security, we promised Malawians employment, we promised Malawians that our government will change the way things are done, it will not be business as usual.
Take us back to the early 90s. You were quite key in changing the political system in Malawi, and at great cost to your personal self as well at the time, opposing the autocratic rule of President Hastings Kamuzu Banda. Take us through that journey and what your hopes and dreams were for Malawi at that time compared to what you've experienced over time.
First and foremost, what we're looking at is to have a country that democracy will mean development, first and foremost. Secondly, was to make sure we have a system that will be free. We have a system that every Malawian will have access to food, every Malawian will have access to good education, every Malawian will have access to very good health facilities, drugs in the hospitals, and every Malawian will be free, and will also have a free and fair elections without intimidation, without violence.
So, you've been in government yourself. What is it that you could have done, do you think, better that would have led to a Ford party becoming a majority party at some point?
You know that in every society, especially our society, first and foremost, the focus should be food. Make sure that every household is food secure, first and foremost. Secondly, is that every household should produce for themselves and some to sell, and the country should also have surplus to export. Our main problem now in Malawi is lack of forex. Lack of forex because there's no enough production for us to consume and also to export. This is our biggest challenge. That's why we are embarking on a new journey. By 16th September onwards, to make sure that AFOD should focus on food security. After food security, we should also have enough to export that will bring forex in the country.
So inflation, currency depreciation, rising debt, these are big issues for Malawi's economy. How would you deal with that if you become president?
You know that when you have enough food, everything will be in place. When you produce and to export, everything will be in place. So here the solution is production. We are failing to do that because we don't have enough forex. We don't have enough forex because of lack of planning. This is what the government should do.
Youth unemployment, a big issue across the continent. Your thoughts on how you're going to deal with that?
One, we have a lot of youth that is sitting idle. you know that we have a population of over 60 to 70% who are youth. The same youth are the highest consumers of food, and they're not producing anything. First and foremost is to make sure that the youth should get involved in production in each and every sector of the society.
I need a bit more, actually, because, it's one thing. When I speak to politicians, often they say this is what they're going to do, but without specifics. Day one, what would you do?
Day one is to make sure that we have information in terms of the actual youth that are unemployed. Secondly, is also to make sure that we create enough employment. Creating enough employment mainly is not in government, it's in the private sector. What do we do? It's in local investment and the foreign investment. But also, Malawi is an agricultural country. This is where we have to focus on. We have a lot of land that is sitting idle. This is where also we can make sure that it's a short-term solution, but there's also a medium term, there's a long term. Long term, we're looking at industrialization. The more industries we have, the more youth will be absorbed in the employment sector.
What's your vision for the public services, particularly health and education, which seem to have been under-resourced over time?
The problem that everything will depend on government. Now you have a problem with our tax base. The government is not collecting enough, so that's why we have to make sure sometimes we think outside the box. What do we do to make sure that our health sector is funded properly, our education also is funded properly? These are the other things that we sit down, bring experts, we plan, and we'll make sure we sort out this problem once and for all.
Let's look at another big issue for Malawi that's come up time and time again now, and that's the issue of corruption. It's a persistent concern. What concrete measures would an Afford government take to fight corruption and improve transparency?
First and foremost, we have what we call Anti-Corruption Bureau. The problem with Anti-Corruption Bureau is compromised politically. What we have to make sure is to change our laws to make sure that the Anti-Corruption Bureau is very independent so that it can also fight corruption independently. Because the Director General of Anti-Corruption Bureau can be appointed by the President, fired by the President. And most of the time you can see the fight towards corruption mainly targets opposition rather than people in the ruling party. Because the DG and all the employees at the Anti-Corruption Bureau, they're answerable to the ruling party. So these are the things that have to change and to make sure that the Anti-Corruption Bureau is very, very free and independent.
Might you consider establishing maybe a special tribunal or another anti-corruption agency with stronger powers?
That's what has to happen, to make sure that we have a very independent Anti-Corruption Bureau established that will be answerable to Parliament.
Questions have been raised about Malawi's democratic institutions. What reforms do you think are necessary to strengthen them to ensure greater accountability in government?
First and foremost, some presidential powers have to be reduced. I'll just give you an example. The president appoints almost everyone. The president will appoint the director generals of all departments, ombudsman, all commission. These are the institutions that hold democracy. Human Rights Commission. So all these people are answerable to the president, and they cannot be independent. You look at also at the judiciary. Sometimes you will see the judges are above the law. They sit on important cases for a very, very long time. They are not answerable to anybody. So there's a need for a complete overhaul, a complete reform of the government system. Our system has to change for us to progress.
So how do you plan to maybe bridge regional divisions and promote inclusive development across the country? It looks as if even at party political level, people vote on a regional basis.
You know that most of the time, as politicians, we take advantage of this type of thing, the tribal affiliations. And I think what we have to do is to make sure we unite Malawians through our message. Alliance for Democracy for a long time has been considered as the Northern Region Party. We have decided to break that barrier by making sure that our top positions are distributed evenly across the country. That's what we have done. And our message is to make sure it's a national message that makes sure that every tribe is included in the development of the country.
Why do you think Ford might enjoy a resurgence, as it were? Because your popularity as a party has been not great in recent years. You did very well at one point. I think it was 36 seats in Parliament.
Yes.
And it hasn't been going great since then.
Yeah, indeed, we have rebranded our party, and also we have done rebuilding for the past 4 years. And also, it's the only party that has not been tested. And our manifesto is the one that now has got a solution for Malawians. Most parties have been tested. We have seen what they have done. Now Malawians are seeking for a new solution, a new political party, a new leader that will bring a new life politically, economically, and socially.
So that new leader you think is you. What do you think you are going to bring that's different?
One, as I said, that we have a manifesto that will create employment. We have a manifesto that will bring sanity economically. We have a manifesto that will make Malawi independent economically, socially. We have also a manifesto that focuses, as I said earlier, on food security. The first thing that has to be done in Malawi is food security. That food security will help to put everything in place.
All right. I mean, this is the party that you're talking about. I want to know a little bit more about Enoch Chiana, your leadership values, perhaps, and what you might describe as your leadership style, because people, in the end, actually trust a person, not a party.
Yes, you know that I've been in politics for over 30 years, and I've also traveled, and I've seen different governments. I can compare what our friends are doing either around us or outside. The experience I have is unique, which most political leaders don't have. I'm a student of political science, international affairs. I understand international politics. I can compare what is happening in Malawi, even what is happening in South Africa. I understand your system very well. I understand systems of government. I understand where we are failing. I understand where we belong in the international system. So that helps us to position ourselves, and that also helps us to cater for our interests. That interest is the one that will make us develop in Malawi.
Controversially, I believe November 2024, you faced some backlash for comments that you made that were perceived to be tribalistic, mocking Chewa people. What's your take on that backlash, and what did you say?
I talked about the cat, which is called Gule Wankuru. In fact, some people took it as if it was an insult. It wasn't. It was just a fair to say, look, elections cannot be done the way Gulewankulu is done, which means Gulewankulu is not necessarily done orderly. All elections have to be done orderly. That's what I said. But you know that sometimes your comments, other people take it so that they can use it politically to damage you. But at the same time, I'm not a tribalist because I belong to two tribes. My mom, she's a Chewa, where this cat comes from, and my father is a Tuka. So I'm part and parcel of that tradition. So nobody can accuse me or nobody can criticize me because of that comment.
And then signing a pact with the Tonse Alliance, Malawi Congress Party, MCP, something you regret?
Not necessarily regret. It's something you learn on the way politically. You know that players in politics are always funny. You may agree something today, it will be different tomorrow. It's part and parcel of political life.
How dangerous is it to be a politician in Malawi? I'm finding out that February this year you were in a convoy that was attacked by armed individuals wielding crude weapons. Tell us about that, and is that indicative of the state of affairs?
In fact, after 30 years plus of democracy, I think we need to be civilized. And we should accept criticisms, we should accept that there's opposition and there's a ruling party. And we should give each other a chance to campaign everywhere without giving each other boundaries. And it's very unfortunate that we have a certain group of people who are very primitive, who think that anybody who is in opposition is an enemy of the state. So these are some of the things we need to change, and it's going to change after the 16th of September.
Let's talk a little bit about foreign policy. Is there a shift, a change that you'd like to make in the way that Malawi is outward facing?
You know, Malawi is very small as far as players in the international system, and changing our foreign policy will not necessarily help. We have to make sure that we are non-aligned and our foreign policy is in line with our national interest. Our national interest, as I said already, is to make sure we have enough food in the country, first and foremost, and we will make sure that our youth are employed. We also have to make sure that we're producing enough to export. And to export, we have to look for new markets. Our new markets, we're talking of China, India, Brazil, and other countries. I think we are still enjoying the AGOA with the Americans. We'll continue that engagement. Also continue the engagement with the European Union, and also to make sure that we engage a lot with our neighbors around us, and also we'll make sure we also revive our relationship with other countries, especially in West Africa.
Many Africans on the continent look at bodies like SADC and the African Union, for example, and they wish that more was being done by those bodies. Would you, as president of Malawi, find a way for these bodies to be, I don't know, for want of a better word, more useful to the people on the ground?
Yes, in fact, SADC, African Union, ECOWAS, and other bodies in Africa, we have to focus more on trade amongst ourselves and also open borders. This has been a song for a very long time. We have to make sure there is also free movement of our people. That will help us to develop more in Africa. There's a lot of restrictions. You find out that in most countries, they are not free to trade with each other. First, they trade with Europe. And secondly, they will trade with the countries within Africa. That has to change. We have to make sure, first and most first and foremost, trade amongst ourselves and also free movement of our people. That should be the focus.
It sounds like you're confident that you're going to do well at these elections. If you don't, what does that mean for you? Might you step back?
No, the journey continues. In Malawi, it's not only me. We have to make sure that we create a conducive environment first and foremost for every 5 years for a free and fair elections. I will tell you the problem that we have now as far as elections are concerned. Number one, we have a compromised electoral commission which is refusing to open voter registration to be conducted. Secondly, they don't want an audit to make sure we audit the voters' roll. This has put a lot of doubt in this electoral commission. We feel that the electoral commission is compromised and they cannot conduct a free and fair elections. The problem also is our constitution, where, as I said already, the president appoints the chair of the electoral commission and all the commissioners. We need to have an independent electoral commission that will conduct a free and fair elections.
And that's where we're going to have to leave it. Thank you so much for giving us some time on the program today. And we wish you and your party the best in the elections come September.
My brother, before you leave, what is also happening in Malawi now is that the political parties in the opposition are also talking. We may have very soon an alliance also, like what happened in the Tons Alliance. This is what is happening at the moment.
Wow. Okay. And any idea who might lead that alliance?
It's being discussed.
Or when can we expect an announcement?
Anytime within 30 days.
Thank you very, very much indeed for that breaking news.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That's Enoch Chihana, who is Chakufwa Chihana's son. Chakufwa Chihana was a prominent Malawian human rights activist and the one who was really instrumental in changing the politics of Hastings Kamuzu Banda back in the day. Enoch Chihana himself has followed in his father's footsteps in the politics in the country and has been Minister of Sports in his day, a Member of Parliament, and is now president of the Afford Party, and he's hoping for a victory at the elections in September. We'll have to wait and see. So that's one of the presidential candidates. We'll try and speak to the others ahead of these elections. It's 8:30, which means it's time for your news headlines with Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. The Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwandan-backed M23 rebels have released separate statements pledging to work towards peace after violence flared in January, raising fears of a wider regional war. Both parties reaffirmed their commitment to an immediate cessation of hostilities, a categorical rejection of any hate speech and intimidation. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in South Africa for a working visit. Zelensky will meet with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in Pretoria. This visit comes as Ukraine faces increasing pressure to agree to tough terms for a peace deal with Russia proposed by U.S. President Donald Trump's negotiators. And France has criticized the lengthy sentences handed down by a Tunisian court against opposition leaders and businessmen on conspiracy charges on the weekend. 40 people were prosecuted in the trial, which started in March, and more than 20 have fled abroad since being charged. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's get our sports update now with Musubudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, for the final time this morning on Africa Rise and Shine. We'll start with the story. So the Confederation of African Football President Patrice Motsepe has called on African football stakeholders to remain intentional in a bid to put the game on the continent among the best in the world. So the next 12 months will see 4 African clubs participate in the FIFA Club World Cup in June before the Women's as well as the Men's Africa Cup of Nations tournament takes centre stage in July and January next year as they build up on the next FIFA World Cup. So speaking exclusively to SABC Sport, Motsepe, who was on Wednesday in the country, South Africa, where he announced the renewal of another key partnership with freight company Africa Global Logistics in Johannesburg, says the bar needs to keep being raised to compete with European football on all fronts.
The quality of football must be appealing because many of our people watch European football and they watch Brazilian football, and in order for us to want to make them watch our football, we've got to make sure that it improves all the time. It's exciting, it's competitive, it is as good as European football, and it's as good as the best in the world.
Right, so having now last month entered his second term as the head of CAF, Motsepe, who led the Confederation through a groundbreaking 4 years from 2021, refuses to gloat over the successes and insists he values the criticism more than the praise.
The important thing is, for me as president, I leave the judgment of how well we have done or even where there may have been failures to yourselves and to various other commentators, because it is in the criticism that we receive that helps us focus on those areas where we might think we're doing well and may do even better.
On to cricket news now. Zimbabwe won their first test match in 4 years with about 3 wickets victory over Bangladesh in Sylhet last night. Now chasing 174, the tourists slipped from 95 for the loss of no wicket to 161 for the loss of 7 wickets, enduring a nervous finish before Wesley Madhevere closed the match with a 4. Now Zimbabwe set up their victory in the morning session of the final day, reducing Bangladesh from 194 for 4 to 255 all out, with player of the match Blessing Mozarabani taking 6 wickets for the loss of 72 runs. Now Zimbabwe will seek a series victory in the second as well as final test beginning in Chattogram on Monday next week. It would also be the first series victory since beating Bangladesh in a one-off test match in August of 2011, while they were facing the same opponent for their last multi-match series victory in 2004. Following their tour, they will then fly out to England to play a one-off test match at Trent Bridge starting on the 22nd of this month. They last toured England for test matches in 2003, losing at Lord's and Chesterley Street. On to athletics news now. Athletics South Africa's Athletes Commission chairperson Hendrik Mokhanyetsi has confirmed that several top athletes will not participate in the national championships as they are set to compete in the Diamond League meeting in China this coming Saturday. So among those absent are 100-meter champion Akane Simbeni, 110-meter hurdles champion Marne Fourie, javelin champion Joanne van Dijk, live play the 400-meter champion, as well as the leading middle distance runner Ryan Pahlele. The nationals will take place at the Park MacArthur Stadium in the capital city from today until Saturday. And Mokhanyetsi says the unavailability of these athletes creates an opportunity for new champions.
Yeah, that event is up for grabs, and also to tell the nation and the people who love athletics that a special exemption was given to few athletes that who presented their case to us, and then based on the merit of the case, we have approved their exemptions that they won't be competing at the championships. There's too much at stake for all these events that the previous championships are not available, but it creates an opportunity for new champions, from the new champions.
Mokganyetsi also athletes that are traveling to China to they are at their own risk rather, but also still offered words of encouragement, urging them to perform well in the Diamond League this coming Saturday. He also highlighted that Athletics South Africa plans to select 3 athletes per event who would then meet the qualifying standards for the World Championships taking place in Tokyo, Japan in September of this year.
The message of support to the athletes that will be away, we're saying they must go there and perform and make sure they gain a lot of ranking points. That can also assist them at the end when we select the teams in terms of the world rankings. They must do their best and raise our flag very high. And we hold thumbs for them.
And that's a wrap from the Sports Desk this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Give us a call on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibu D. Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. The Midnight Snack. Every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege.
That is just me trying to imagine myself as a backup singer for Zonke because her music is just beautiful. As the song was playing, I was just, moving like a backup singer. You know how they are, with their hands being so dramatic and, putting that spice into the song. So the song is called Say Now and we love it here on the Midnight Snack. I hope you also love it.
Let's talk love, intimacy, and relationships on the Midnight Snack with Chanduko Ligege. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Well, lots of talk about South Africa's VAT increase now having been reversed in terms of the decision to increase VAT. I'm sure we'll hear more about that in our economics update. And of course, on Rise and Shine, we wanted to speak and get the view from the African National Congress, but they're saying they have a press briefing at 10 a.m. on this issue and will only take interviews after that. So do stay tuned to Channel Africa for more coverage on that as we get the different angles involved in this very important story. Our business news now with Eva Chiba.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Rwanda says it is in talks with the US over a potential minerals deal, a development that follows similar ongoing talks between Washington and Rwanda's neighbor, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Responding to a Reuters question on whether Kigali and Washington were discussing a mineral access deal, a Rwandan government spokesperson confirmed discussions were taking place but did not provide any further details. Congo accuses Rwandan President Paul Kagame's government of supporting the M23 rebels who have seized a large swath of eastern Congo, a mineral-rich region that is plagued by violence. South Africa's Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana has written to National Assembly Speaker Thoko Didiza indicating the decision to reverse the 0.5 percentage point VAT increase, which was supposed to come into effect on the 1st of next month. This means that value-added tax will remain at 15% after strong opposition from some political parties and civil society groups. Lula Mamiaja reports.
The fiscal framework and revenue proposals was passed by the National Assembly early this month with a slight margin. It included recommendations from Action SA, which was against a VAT increase, that National Treasury must be given 30 days to come up with alternatives to tax hikes. The matter was also taken to the Western Cape High Court by the DA and EFF, who are some of the parties that were against the VAT increase, and judgment was reserved. Kodongwana says he will soon introduce a revised version of the appropriation bill and division of revenue bill.
Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, has added its voice to calls for opposing austerity measures in public education. COSATU affiliate South African Democratic Teachers Union, SATU, led a march to the offices of the National Treasury, the Basic and Higher Education Departments in Pretoria yesterday. This was in protest against the budget cuts that SATU says are negatively impacting on the quality of education, especially in rural, township and special needs schools. COSATU President Zingiswa Lusi says education is a weapon that has the power to change a black child's life.
We want to say to the National Treasury, if you touch our education, you touch our future, and we will shut this country down if we must. As a federation, we are here with you, SATU City. We will no longer beg for what is rightfully ours. We demand an immediate investment in public education.
Oil prices ticked up early this morning after falling nearly 2% in the previous session, with investors weighing a potential OPEC Plus output increase against conflicting tariff signals from the White House and ongoing US-Iran nuclear talks. Brent crude futures rose 6 cents to $66.18 a barrel, while US West Texas Intermediate crude gained 7 cents to $62.34 a barrel. Signs that the US and China could be moving closer to trade talks gave prices some support. The Wall Street Journal reported that the White House would be willing to lower its tariffs on China to as low as 50% in order to open up negotiations. And lastly, the head of Brazil's State Pension Institute, Alessandro Stefanuto, has been sacked after being accused of involvement in a scheme that defrauded pensioners of $1.1 billion over the past 6 years. Stefanuto and other officials implicated in the scheme, which has allegedly been active since 2019, have all been suspended. However, he denies any wrongdoing. The BBC's Leonardo Rocha has the details.
Police say corrupt officials had set up unauthorized deductions from millions of pensioners who often didn't notice the discrepancy in their monthly payments. More than 90% of pensioners interviewed by police said they never signed any form. Fake signatures were found in thousands of documents filed at Brazil's State Pension Institute. Federal police officers served more than 200 search warrants across the country.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 607. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 59. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 65. And in Zambia, it's 28 kwacha 44. To the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 71. In Russia, 82 rubles 51. India, it's 85 rupees 40. China, 7 yuan 29. And in South Africa, it's 18 rand 59 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,341, platinum at $969 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $66.18 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2 711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, I'm Eva Chipa.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Wake up, Africa. Beda Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Okay, let's take a look at our final story for this Thursday's edition of Rise and Shine. Talking Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, who is in South Africa. This is his first and official visit to the country. And we now cross to our reporter at the Union Buildings in Pretoria, where Zelensky is expected to meet South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa. Good morning, Michael. How are you?
Good morning, Asanda, and the rest of the team in the back office.
And in this cold weather, you have to be out there, hey?
Absolutely. Freezing. But, the good thing is that, I have my, bomber jacket, Channel Africa bomber jacket, and, I'm covered. But, Asanda, just to do this quickly as I rush to do my accreditation, welcome to this exclusive coverage of a significant diplomatic moment in the history of the nations of South Africa and Ukraine, as we will witness South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa hosting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky here at the UN buildings in South Africa's capital, Pretoria, marking the first ever official visit to South Africa by a Ukrainian head of state. So this high-level meeting follows President Ramaphosa's visit to Ukraine in June last year as part of the Africa Peace Initiative. The two leaders are expected to strengthen bilateral ties with key discussions focused on trade, agriculture, education, and collaborative effort towards lasting global peace amid the current global geopolitical climate. As you are aware, Asanda, the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. So that is also one of the big discussions that is going to take center stage here. And then so we are here to see whether, President Ramaphosa holds the key towards, the peace deal in this conflict. So the program is as follows. Currently, media accreditation, and then at 11, President Ramaphosa will receive the President of Ukraine. At 12 o'clock, they will have a close official talks by President and the Presidents will meet in a closed session. At 1:15, President Ramaphosa will brief the media together with President Volodymyr Zelensky. The above times are just mere guidelines are subject to change, and Channel Africa is here to give you, valued listeners, updates on the proceedings here, of course, through all our social media platforms, Asanda.
So you gave us the details then. I mean, the general aim is peace efforts and deepened relations between Ukraine and South Africa, and you've given us the details in terms of what the meeting will actually entail. On the topic of peace and peace deals, Zelensky is under immense pressure to agree to U.S. terms when it comes to a peace deal with Russia. Can this visit in South Africa now ease the pressure and paint Zelensky in a different and better light to other international sentiments and relations?
Indeed, and then these the proposed, terms requires that Ukraine do permanently cede Crimea and then also abandon its ambitions to join NATO. So it remains, Asanda, as you say, that whether South Africa will be able to facilitate a peace agreement between the two warring nations. Political analysts have shared their thoughts. They've said that this is an opportunity for South Africa, to continue from, the visit that happened in mid-June, where a team of 7 African presidents, of among others, Egypt, South Africa, Uganda, and Zambia, visited Ukraine and Russia, with South Africa as a leading economy in Africa. Its President Cyril Ramaphosa obtained the mandate to lead the initiative to attempt to make peace in the ongoing conflict. So we are here to see whether, Ramaphosa indeed has the password to crack, this peace deal, Asanda.
Not so long ago, South Africa and the Ukraine were not the best of friends, with Pretoria's close ties to Russia. And to be clear, Pretoria refusing to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Have the two countries buried the hatchet and moved on?
Indeed, and then as you know, South Africa now is trying to play, your enemy is not my enemy, your brother is my brother. As you know, South Africa, non-aligned, it was blamed actually that in this conflict it was siding with Russia. So I think this now shows that South Africa to the world, its non-alignment as far as its, foreign policy is concerned. But also, this comes, following a phone call a few days ago by President Cyril Ramaphosa to Russian President Vladimir Putin, just to alert him that, look, your brother next door will be visiting me. So, as we are aware that Asanda, Russia and South Africa are part of the BRICS, family. So I think it was a good thing that you alert your brother that, look, the brother that you are fighting with will be visiting me, but nothing sinister behind it. We will have our conversations. We will strengthen our bilateral relations, since this is also marks the first ever visit by a Ukrainian leader to our shores, Asanda.
Right. South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola, has mentioned other meetings that took place between Ramaphosa and Zelensky recently at Davos in February this year and New York last year. Is our President Ramaphosa seen as the best man to speak to both sides of the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
Absolutely. This comes, at the backdrop of Ramaphosa, how he contributed to the Constitution of South Africa as far as, negotiating peace. So he's, known as a master negotiator. I think we are very hopeful that, he can really lead to a peace deal that the likes of U.S., as you know, as you alluded, it's very strange that they are pushing for such a deal that they must surrender the Crimea and then also stop, pursuing to become part of NATO. So we'll see how Ramaphosa will maneuver and navigate through this challenge, because Zelensky yesterday he completely refused, to bow down to the pressure coming from the U.S.
The Minister Lamola has himself had a meeting with his Ukrainian counterpart in Moscow after co-chairing the SA-Russia Joint Intergovernmental Committee on Trade and Economic Cooperation. How important will it serve that, apart from President's meeting for this peace and strengthening relations agenda, the ministers in the relevant and strategic departments also meet?
Yeah, indeed. Looking at the current geopolitical tensions that are happening, South Africa's agenda they are pushing, and then looking also at the agendas that towards the G20 summit, which is being chaired by the South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa. So I think this is a momentous occasion, indeed, for Ramaphosa to show to the world that South Africa is not, just here, a small brother, just like, the U.S. are looking at, South Africa's position. Indeed, Asanda. But just to cut it short, Asanda, I have to go and see what is happening, because they are pushing that by 9 o'clock we should be inside, so that the criticisms are done. But I think I will also be updating you. I think at 9:30 I will also update you on what is happening at that particular time, Sanda.
All right. Well, thanks so much for that. So stay tuned to Channel Africa to hear more from Michael Mbewe. That's him there, Channel Africa reporter, coming to us live from Pretoria's Union Buildings. That's where Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is expected to, on his first and official visit to the country, meet our President, South African Cyril Ramaphosa. We'll leave it there for now. And as we say, stay tuned to Channel Africa on that story, as well as the VET South Africa's story. South Africa is busy today.
I think both stories are huge. The VAT one, we didn't get a chance to speak to a political analyst, but this is an enormously huge political story. The ANC has written a statement which is quite interesting. I mean, they're basically saying that let's go to it again. They're saying that they welcome the finance minister's position, and that following, what do they say, that the proposed VAT increase had eclipsed pro-poor expansionary aspects of the budget speech, and as increased allocations to social support programs and infrastructure investment, a departure from the austerity of the past decade. They're talking almost as if to say, okay, we hear you, and they talk about this underscores the need for more transparent and inclusive approaches to matters of national importance. But this is what was being said in Parliament by those opposing the VAT increase.
Yeah, that transparency was lacking.
They were adamant. They were gung-ho about this. Something has happened in the last week, and I think it's beyond the court case. We'll find out. It'll all get unpacked eventually.
And I'm sure by the time we get here tomorrow from 6 till 9,
it'll have all been unpacked.
It's all going to be a lot of information that we share. Benjamin, why are you now knocking things over in the studio? Good morning, Benjamin Mushatama. To tell us about what's coming up next after Rise and Shine, of course, is on the move here on Channel Africa.
And Benjamin, you know that the VAT's not going up, eh? Are you delighted?
Super. I was listening to the multiple debates and the political conversations this morning on radio. Like, why is it a big deal? Let's get over it. It's not happening.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
We're excited.
Because you know what? The cost of things is just like we're not. No.
Oh, okay.
That's your forte. That's your expertise. We don't try to become like you guys. You guys are the experts. All right, we're going to be talking about something very interesting today. I don't know. Do you guys walk around at night?
In our complex.
Just walking around?
Only in our complex.
Okay.
Not outside of the complex.
You mean like to take a walk for exercise?
Evening walks and just...
No, not for me. No, I do the mornings, not evenings.
Okay, why not? Especially as a woman.
Well, I'm a woman, so I don't feel safe to do it at night by myself unless I go with someone.
Okay, that's exactly what we're talking about. Women actually taking back their space and actually initiating evening walks in Cape Town.
Okay.
And there's a consortium of women, just a group of women that say, you know what, we want our city back, we want our streets back. And what they've done is actually, they've hosted what they call Women Who Walk at Midnight.
Wow.
Is it midnight at the actual time? Midnight?
Yeah, it's like from around 8 o'clock to midnight. They'll just take walks, claim their space, claim their streets.
Is this as a group?
As a group of women, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
And you know what?
As a group, it makes sense.
It makes sense. And maybe symbolically, it does talk to women should be allowed to walk alone at any time of day.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah, so we're going to find out why this is done. We're going to be speaking to the innovator of this walk, a professor at South Africa's University of Cape Town, Amrita Pandey. Why did she think this is kind of a socio-economic experiment to embark on? And why also is it geared around women? Because I feel we all feel not safe. But I think there is a highlight when it comes to women, why they would feel in this country that, you know what, this is not a space for us.
Women are particularly, that's the word.
Yeah, particularly
vulnerable.
But this is Cape Town, though. I wonder how long before it translates to other cities where... I mean, Cape Town is an international destination. It's seen as safer. Than say, for example, if you are in Soweto,
I lived in Cape Town.
Do that?
It's not safe at all.
Well, but it's seen as being safer.
Yeah, no, Cape Town is not safe.
If I'm in the Eastern Cape,
that music says that we have to go. The debate is over. Subject to a parliamentary review. But that's it for us on the program Rise and Shine. On the move coming up after the 9 o'clock
That's an interesting one, though. Thank you so much, and to everyone for listening. My name is Asanda Beda. It's goodbye from us for now.
Here's the news with Onel Nsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Well, thank you, Peter. Looking at your top stories, the DRC and the M23 rebels pledged to work towards peace, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to meet South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa in Pretoria this morning. Your latest news, greetings to our listeners. The Democratic Republic of Congo and the M23 rebels, in a statement yesterday, pledged to work towards peace after violence flared in January, raising fears of a wider regional war. Each side released the same statement separately after their delegations departed Qatar earlier in the week, following more than a week of discussions. Both parties have reaffirmed their commitment to an immediate cessation of hostilities, a categorical rejection of any hate speech and intimidation. The latest peace push by Qatar has reported